Me, I'm Imperial from Krieg. We're based out of around Atlantic City, New Jersey, northeast of the United States. I'm the sole member. Musically, I'm inspired by bands like The Hair, Profanatica, Old Carcass, Moonblood from Germany, Barkthrone, stuff like that. And lyrically, it's just anything that comes to mind when I'm writing. Say my all-time favorite album is probably The Hair It's Drawing Down the Moon. The first time I ever got a chance to listen to it was a few years ago, and I just thought it had such a feeling of nuclear desolation that no other band could really capture it. It blended the death and the black melancholy really well, so that's what kept me looking. Message or concept I'm trying to really show in Krieg is the whole might is right philosophy, strength by will, all of that, self-glorification. You are your own God. It's pretty much the outlook. Best thing about the current scene, especially the U.S. scene, is a lot of bands are getting a lot faster, a lot harsher, less keyboards, more brutality. It feels like 91, 92 in Europe around here, so it seems getting good. The whole metal thing is definitely a way of life. Vinyl, long hair, leather spikes, all that, chains, all that good shit. It's a definite must. And just a good love for the music.
right, there we go. That was Krieg live from the Sacrifice of the Nazarene Child in 2000, maybe, fucking 24 years ago. I wonder if Neill still feels the same about his opinions from those days. Who knows? But maybe we can find out because here he is. Let's bring him aboard. Here is Neill Jameson from Krieg. What's up, dude?
Hey, um, yeah, 24 years, man. That is because that was the first time we ever did a live Krieg thing,
Was
and
it okay? I couldn't remember if that was the first time that
that
Krieg,
was it. Yeah,
the first
that was
show.
the debut performance.
Wow,
Yep, of which
those
you were a part of.
yeah. I was thinking back. I was like, how did I learn the songs? Like fucking Neil sent me a VHS. You sent me a VHS of you playing the songs,
Hmm.
and what we practiced like one time before the show, if that.
And I mean, it's not like those songs back then had any kind of structure to them at all. I mean, it was just all like really.
Just attack. Yeah, it was more about feeling than being all structured and all that. I think they were like what, two riff songs, so we could probably pull them off with, whatever the case was. But it was fun. I remember that, dude. It was a good time because I had never
Yeah,
done that.
man.
I never done that before, where I just stepped in and played. Kind of, kind of broke the cherry because usually I was always well rehearsed with a band and never did any of the sessioning type of stuff. But so yeah, 20 fucking 4 years ago, dude. So let's talk about like back in those days or even before them, Neil. Like when did metal like come up on your radar as a teenager or older kid or what when did this happen?
Well, I mean, in the '80s, I was really hyper focused on guitar driven music. So nothing, super extreme when I was a kid, Guns
Of
N'
course,
Roses, that kind of thing.
yeah,
And then in the early '90s, uh, I was really big into a lot of the grunge shit, which I know was kind of anathema to people who were into metal at the time, since they kind of knocked out uh, the hair scene and really just kind of took the place of where metal was at the time. But that was
yeah,
that was when I was young enough that was really like my foundation. And then right after that, I started getting introduced to stuff like Bolt Thrower, Morbid Angel, Slayer, Entombed. Those were all like my like real early experiences. So I was like 14, 15 when I started, checking that shit out.
yeah. That's about the right age to
And
check that stuff
then,
out. Yeah,
yeah, because that's when you really start figuring out, at least at the time, who you are and kind of where you want to be.
mm-hmm.
And then we had in Jersey, we had a college radio station based out of the Stockton College. And it had like a 10-mile radius. So, like me and my friends were super lucky to even be able to hear the fucking thing.
Wow, 10 miles. Jeez.
And through that, there was a show on there where the guy was playing Samael, Dark Throne, Emperor,
Whoa,
all
nice.
the harsher death metal stuff. At least at the time, like that was my introduction to Deicide and Suffocation, all the Florida bands, really, besides Morbid Angel. Because I mean, a lot of people forget before the internet, if you were isolated, it was really hard to kind of come
Sure,
across these things. If
exactly.
you weren't near a major city, or if you didn't have a fucking car at the time, or you hadn't figured out how to navigate public transportation, which is what me and my friends eventually did, so that we could catch buses to Philly and New York and all that, and be able to see shows and get into record stores that actually had like even deeper, more extreme underground stuff, and so it just kind of steamrolled from there.
Yeah, I think too. Before the internet, fanzines, were the the way to really discover a lot of bands to hear them without actually hearing them. You know what I mean? Like read about them and you start, I guess, building a rapport with certain zines, and you'll be like, oh, if they like it, I'm going to write to them and order their demo or whatever, their CD or album or
Hmm.
something. But if you didn't have access to that and you're out in the boonies, you know, it's tough to even know that there's a this underground scene that exists prior to the internet. Now the internet, anybody can pretty much hop on and get it figured out. It's not a difficult thing.
Yeah, all
So
these demos from when we were younger that were given out just to friends, limited to like 10 copies. Now it's on fucking YouTube on at least like 10 different channels.
Yeah,
And
it's funny because when we were like, at least us, when we were like getting into black metal, there still was that a mystique of black metal.
there was.
There's no mystique of black metal anymore. I mean, I know I see bands come and they try, but it's kind of impossible with the internet and the way there's no mystique. I still like black metal, and I like bands who are going to try to be black metal, but I can't take being like super cult and all that with the internet. You know, it's just like, I don't know, man. It's just tough. How do you feel about that?
I think the mythology's kind of, worn away a little bit. When you're able to talk to Varg on Twitter, that kind of, that takes a little bit of that away. There's still bands that definitely have like that feeling, that kind of real sincerity to them. But in order for that to really kind of work, you have to ignore a lot of the noise and chatter that goes on around it. You have to ignore people's fans. You have to try to experience the music as music and not as a commodity. And unfortunately,
That's a good way. Yeah.
It's really difficult these days because everything, I mean, bands come out, they'll have a 3-song demo, but they'll have fucking 5 shirt designs. And everybody's, it's gone from being something, and I'm generalizing because I know that there's plenty of bands out there that still do it for the passion, the belief, and the love and all that. But it's gone from that into something where a lot of bands really try to market themselves. They're trying to, make a living out of this through this passive income stream, through selling merchandise or, selling downloads and all that. And I guess it's the same as how punk, kind of morphed into, and it's the same as every subculture does, where once it kind of hits, I don't want to say the mainstream because it's obviously not, but once it hits the greater society, then it just starts becoming more of entertainment, more of a commodity, more of merchandise than a real expression of art. Just kind of waters it down a little bit.
When you see, bands that used to really be about it, and then now you can tell, it is their way of, making their living. What can I say? How can I word it? It's just like the core message of the band is diluted now, because it's not, like you just said, it's not about art. It really is about them making a living. They got to make a living.
I don't begrudge anybody for making a living off of what they do, or trying to go out there and make money off of their music or their art or writing or whatever. I think I've hit a point in my life where it doesn't affect me personally what people do with their art or their product, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
But it really does take a lot of the mystique away from it. And
I don't think I'm like, or me, I'm not like begrudging them for wanting to, get their guarantee or whatever. You do what you got to do to make your money. But it also just like, the primary focus kind of shifts, and that happens when you're you got to make it about making your money. But hey, what I love, not have to put in 40 hours a week and just play music and still make the same money or more. I'm not going to deny that doesn't sound like a terrible proposition either, if I could just focus on music. But I never been in that boat, so maybe it changes my music. I don't know. And I'm sure
it becomes a job, I imagine.
Yeah, and doesn't that kind of almost make it a little not like, I don't know, you want them to be able to want to go and make music with your friends and create art and have fun like that, and not like, fuck, I gotta go rehearse with these guys again for this tour and all that. Fuck that. I don't want it to be about that.
Yeah, it's like when just lost my train of thought, but like you're not pulling it from anywhere except this feeling that you're responsible for creating in order to make money. So I don't know if that motivation changes how the quality of the music is. I mean, I'm sure that there's some people that can still write absolutely captivating music that are in it solely for the money. And I guarantee that we can each name at least 30 bands that write absolute dog shit music that are completely into it because they love it. And you have to sit and look. You're like, well, who's worse off here? The band that's doing good music that we can listen to and enjoy and get something from, or like these awful fucking bands that are pumping out a demo every 15 minutes with 7 minutes worth of a wind sample and then just this awful derivative bullshit music. And is that, I guess that's also a symptom of the internet, because
that's an excellent point. Because I hear a lot of that now, like whatever they call them, the Cabalt True guys of the underground now, and the bands. A lot, they'll rave about it, exactly what you just said, like some dissonant chord for 20 minutes with this yelling and screaming, and doing like some weird interlude, like you said, of the wind blowing and moaning. And it's just like, is that what's true now? Is that what we gotten to in black metal? Like it just has to be like that, not to be considered a sellout. I don't know.
I mean, I imagine that that's always been the case, but now with the internet and the fact that like you can get GarageBand on your phone, you can record fucking anything anywhere, so it becomes a case of everybody can, not everybody should.
Yeah. Well, that's another symptom of the internet and easy access to like good recordings now. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, dude. I ain't gonna lie. It's a lot nicer that you can record your own band now and not have to spend a ton of money in studios or try to rush everything in a one day because that's all you got money for. So you just get it recorded. So there's good and bad in the modern scene that we have now. But it also, like me and Jeff talked about this one, it's also given a lot of voices. I'm going to say it, I guess it's a gatekeeping comment, it's given voices to a lot of people who haven't yet earned the right to give their voice. Does that sound like a gatekeeping comment to you? Or
it is, and I 100% agree with it.
Right? Because you got to get to a certain quality point before you can release it to the world. That's how I feel.
I mean, I don't want to sound like the old guy being like, well, back in my day, this is what we had to do to be heard and all that. But there is definitely, there's definitely a value to that kind of being in the minor leagues for a while, being
for sure,
having to prove yourself before that you're able to stand and speak on topics and speak on people. You really, it's good to have that experience that kind of keeps you humble at the beginning, and it keeps you hungry. I mean, god damn, when I first started this, like I was always trying to get approval of like the older people, and I was always trying to figure out what I can do in order to make myself seem valid in that kind of arena. I mean, this is like when I really first started, and then fortunately USBM really kind of around like 96, 97, like everybody started finding each other. We started doing a lot of tape trading. Bands were popping up left and right, so like there wasn't really as much of a need to try to get like the older generation in on shit, because the people who are our age, who are coming up, all relatively at the same time, we were building our own scene, and that really became the backbone of what USBM is. I mean, sure, there's been American black metal for a really long time
prior,
but it wasn't until like the mid-late 90s, once we all started really connecting and started like the Sacrifice Fest, and then Kyle Powell doing fests in Jersey and all that, like where it really just started interconnecting people. We built that framework that still exists now, and so bands now don't necessarily even have to go through those kinds of hardship experiences, because we've already built that for them.
And that's a good fact, because prior to that, there really wasn't in the U.S. a network. There were already, we had Absu, Demon Seed, Profanatica, and all that, but it wasn't a network. And I want to give you your flowers, because I think you were one of the key components to kind of get the USBM scene of that time connected to each other. Like you reached out to me, you know, talking about the demo. I sent you some, and I think I don't remember correctly. If I'm wrong, tell me. But you know, I think I gave you some to distribute to whoever. And then the next thing I know, I'm getting people from Europe writing me because you sent the demo off to them, like Hervé, you know, from Antaeus or whatever, and then he spread it out. So that's like, I think that was a key factor for the U.S. black metal scene. And there really wasn't an underground U.S. black metal scene prior to that. There might, you know, people into black metal, but I think, like you said, the late '90s, early 2000s is when it started like actually connecting with each other. And we did, like you said, we took the heat, you know, the start scene kinda, and the European heat and all that. But let's talk about, you know, before we even get into that, what was your Krieg, and when did you decide to you know, make Krieg, you know, start the band?
Pretty quickly on after I first heard black metal, I was a budding musician, and it just felt like that was the sort of thing that, one, I could do, and two, that I wanted to do. That I was able to do something more of storytelling, I suppose, with through music. You know, being able to go in, do samples, like really just try to take you through. This is gonna sound so fucking lame, but take you through a journey through music. That was, you know, I was really big into role playing games, fantasy books, that kind of stuff. When I was a kid, fantasy movies, all that medieval, you know. So it felt like that would be an outlet for me to kind of explore through that. And so in '95, I started writing riffs, and that became the first Imperial demo, which was, you know, Krieg before it was Krieg.
Yeah.
And then I joined a death metal band that same year called Abominus, and I was with them for like 2 years, and eventually got kicked out. And when I got kicked out from Abominus, that was when I really started taking Krieg seriously. That's when I started sending out the demo all over the place. Like I'd sent it to Pussy God Records, the label that dude from Maniac Butcher ran. I believe I sent a copy to Hervé. I just would send. I would basically, every band that I enjoyed, I would find their address and I would just send them a copy. Because back then, you know, postage wasn't super expensive, and it was. Plus, I was young enough. I had disposable income from, you know, shitty job. I wasn't, you know, paying a fucking mortgage or anything. So
yeah,
the moment I really started connecting with people, it became almost an addiction, because I saw where things could go. Not that I, you know, saw like rock stardom or anything like that, but I saw being able to connect with like-minded people that helped me feel less isolated in my life. Really, I mean, because, you know, I had friends in high school that were into the stuff, but, you know, we kind of grew apart towards the end, and this was my way of making my mark in the world. And then once it came time to do a record, you know, the full length, that was basically when, you know, things became real. And so, you know, I started focusing in on it. But it wasn't until like much, much later that I really gave it the gravity of thought that it deserved. I mean, it took a long time for me to get out from just doing, you know, wanting to do like the interview that you just saw, like that mindset, just wanting to do like just this harsh, noisy, raw, nasty black metal, to where I could start writing about myself. You know, I didn't have to have these preordained black metal topics that I was going through. So it's all in steps. When did I want to start doing it? When I was 15.
15? Damn. So how old were you when you went to the Sacrifice Fest for the first time?
I was freshly 21. When we did the Judas Iscariot performance. Yeah, I was 21.
What are your memories of that one, by the way, the Judas Iscariot performance?
It was terrifying, but the most exhilarating moment of my life. Because I've been given this opportunity and this responsibility to play somebody who I really respected, play what I thought was going to be the only show that we would ever do. And plus having, Pro Scripter on drums, and I'd been an Absu fan since I was, much younger. It had like this really, it had a lot of weight to it. And then, getting into Texas, it was the first time I've ever been to Texas. And, Bernie from Lust came down too. And it was just this meeting of everybody who, again, all these like-minded individuals that, you tape traded with or you talked to on AOL, or, you read about in zines and all that. Getting everybody there in person to kind of celebrate what we were doing. Because that's what that fest felt like. The first few years was this celebration of American black metal. It was our way of introducing ourselves to the greater world.
You could kind of tell there was something in the air, lack of a better word, that something was going on there at those early fests, that wasn't really, happened prior to that. It was something like fucking pretty awesome because, performance, issue aside, I just having the Judas Iscariot show, live for the first time. I think, was that the only time it happened in America though? Or did he play any other shows?
Yeah, then we did Under the Black Sun the next year in Germany.
How many live shows did Judas Iscariot do? Was
just 2.
Those 2? Mm-hmm. And you were still in the band, right? You still did bass in the German show?
Yeah, I did both of them. Yep.
There you go. So that's kind of cool to do.
It was like the excitement of. Imagine the excitement of seeing tits in person for your first time ever.
Yes, yeah, that's a great example.
Because that was because I was a young man at the time, so like those were like the exciting mythological things that like you would think about when you're younger, but like you never expected to happen. Having a crowd like the Sacrifice crowd, every time we played, the one time with Judas and the 2 with Krieg, were always fucking amazing. And then going to Germany for Under the Black Sun the next year and seeing hundreds of people in the crowd, like it's the kind of thing that you never really expect to experience until you're actually there. And it's difficult to describe, but I've played at this point now, Krieg's been active live for 24 years. So I've done a few hundred shows, and I can remember that first Sacrifice Fest with Krieg and both Judas shows better than I can remember the majority of the other shows that I've done.
That's funny because first shows are always whatever band I'm in get embedded in my head, and then all the ones in between, maybe something happens at the show and that makes me remember it. But just performing live, it kind of starts to blur unless something like major happens. But first shows and maybe last shows are always like I remember. I can kind of remember it pretty darn good. Like I remember the first, my first show in my first punk band, crossover band. I remember my first show with who was after that? Indignation. I remember my first show with Thornspawn, and then Cerebral Distortion and Pius Levis, and all that. And it's funny that you say that because those they're like kind of like monumental moments in your life. Don't mean they're monumental elsewhere, but in your life, it's a major unlocked, achievement award that, hey, I fucking, got this to happen in my fucking band. Got up on stage and finally ripped it, played the show.
Mm-hmm.
So with, going back to Krieg, how do you feel about like Rise of the Imperial Horde and Destruction Ritual and all, the earlier albums?
I think Rise sucks, but I have since, 2000 or so. I can't listen to the first 2 records. There's just something about them that I appreciate what I did at the time, but like it's just no. It's like looking back on like a toxic relationship. You just don't want to think about it. Now, Destruction Ritual was the last record that I did that was in that semi-improvised write and record the guitars first, and then let a drummer figure it out on top of it. That album I still absolutely love, because it took that early barbaric primitive sense, and it took it to its natural conclusion. I mean, that's a hard record to listen to. It's close to power electronics in some points, just because I took there's no bass on the record, and I took a metal zone and I just dialed everything to 10, and that's why it's just this harsh wall
Just
of
total
noise.
attack, yeah.
And then the drums weren't recorded for 2 years after that. I mean, because we did the Judas Sacrifice show, and then I did the first Veltmach record, and then like a few weeks after that, and then right on the heels of that, I recorded all the guitars for Destruction Ritual. And then it took years to find a drummer to be able to take care of it. But it marks like the end of that chapter for me, and I still look back on it really, really fondly. I mean, I can look back on all of it really fondly, because it got me to where I'm at now. It's all an important building block.
Yeah, it's a stone in the step to where you got. I
Exactly.
still like Destruction Ritual. I appreciate just the ferociousness and just the attack of it all. But yeah, I heard what you're saying. You should get better as a musician, as a band. You shouldn't degress. You should improve. So you're actually going down a good path. And to me, I think like the Black House kind of is like a great point in Krieg's discography. How do you feel about that?
It's the most important thing that I've ever done and probably ever will do that wasn't related to Judas Iscariot. Though it was, because Andy's on that record. He's the guitarist on the record. That was when I started taking it seriously. That was when I kind of figured, you know what, fuck it. I don't care about the perception around me. I don't care about having to fulfill any kind of image or any kind of scene dogma or anything like that. Like, I was really starting to get into a lot of different music. That was when I was hitting like my Lou Reed, Velvet Underground, Iggy Pop, like that phase. And so I was taking a lot of just the kind of fuck you of that and putting into my own music. And then I was going through some shit. I mean, my mother had just died. I found her body. I found her corpse. So
yeah, that was rough.
yeah, I mean that fucked me up.
Yeah.
And so I started having all these nightmares, they were based around it, and that basically created the Black House. I started using music as therapy rather than, a way to go out and, express aggression or be noisy and obnoxious or anything like that. Like, I started caring more about writing impactful riffs and lyrics that meant something to me, because even back then I realized that, 20, 30, 40 years down the line or whatever, however long I live, it's most important to me to know that I did something that matters to me, that's something that's personal, something that, really expresses something for me. It's a document of myself in that time. And so that I started looking at Krieg more as an expression of myself, more as an autobiographical vehicle than anything else. And that was the turning point. That's still how I feel now. So,
I mean, that's good, because I think some of the best music in the world is pulled from your own personal feelings, and like you said, and we can take certain, like you said, dogmas and just crash through them and do what you want to do. I mean, still obviously keep it in the realm of what you've done, but expand on it, expand on it and make it, even like because as other people say, real recognizes real, and that's like a real thing when it comes like that. I know that's all hip hoppy and whatever fucking, but you know what I mean? That's what happens, it's like a lot of people
it's appropriate.
See that. Yeah, it's like, oh, this is a real thing here. It's not just, fucking cold, Satan and all that. Don't get me wrong, I still eat up all that stuff too. I'm pretty sure I'm never gonna.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've got shelves and shelves of that shit behind me. So.
Yeah, so yeah, this is the way it's gonna go. But it's fucking cool. Now, to me, like, Krieg toured Europe first, right? Was that with Inquisition and all that stuff? Am I remembering that correctly? You guys booked some type of tour over there? Well,
It
through
was the North
Andy
American
kind of.
black metal invasion.
Yes. Now, give me
Yeah.
the backstory of all that, because I remember Andy asked Thornspawn, but at the time, now Mr. Globo-trotting can go anywhere, but back then it was like a total no-go. So I was like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. I wanted to, but anyway, give me the backstory how all that came together.
So Andy, approached me. He was like, I wanted to do the first American black metal tour in Europe. I mean, before that, Absu had gone over.
Yeah,
That was it. And so Andy kind of wanted to break the door down to be able to get American black metal to be taken a little bit more seriously in Europe, which, I mean, it took a while after that. But
oh yeah, that
he just wanted
first.
to bring
Yeah.
over. Yeah, it was the first strike, basically. And so it was us, Inquisition, Godless North, and then Secrets of the Moon was the local support. And we did, Jesus Christ, trying to remember all the shows. We did Belgium and Ypres, which was awesome. Played there a few times. It's always fantastic. Hamburg, Berlin, the one where we did a live record that I don't fucking remember the city, and another place that I don't remember. But it was basically, it was one show in Belgium and then multiple shows in Germany. And I mean, we went over, it was 2001. So it was maybe it was December 2001. So it was a few months after 9/11. So that right there,
That
was
makes
already
it tough.
kind of a,
Yeah.
that was already like a wild time to be traveling, because we did the Sacrifice Fest right before that. That was kind of the kickoff of the tour, where Inquisition and us played Sacrifice, and then from Texas we flew to Europe. And so already, like, getting to Texas, like, I remember landing and I'm pretty sure that I think you picked us up, actually, and I just remember all these fucking soldiers walking around with like machine guns and shit, thinking like, where are we? Are these the fucking federales? I mean, it was nuts.
Oh yeah,
And then
yeah, that's right. They all were at the airport and shit. Yep.
And then getting over to Europe right after that, it was tense, but once we landed, it was cool. But like my original guitarist that was supposed to come, he never made the plane. He said that he was arrested for speeding on the way there, but he apparently had a panic attack and didn't want to travel to Europe. So
I don't remember that. God damn, that sucks. Okay, that's a fucking.
So Jeff ended up, he took over.
Right, Jeff fucking just jumped in.
He went from
style.
bass to guitar, and then we had the tour manager Steve. He did bass for us. So it was basically we had to throw a line up together at the Sacrifice Fest because the guitarist didn't show up, and Joe from Noctuary covered. Joe and Rob from Noctuary.
That's right. Yep.
And so in the matter of 48 hours, I had to put together two bands, basically, and teach them a whole bunch of shit that I could barely play myself. Because this was back when we were mostly doing stuff off of Rise. Destruction Ritual hadn't, like, it had just come out, so we did a few songs off of that. And it was the first time I'd ever done a tour, so it was already like, that was already fucking wild enough. And it was just, it was really, it was a really good education to see how Europeans, how they handled black metal, how they approached it versus how Americans did. How serious they were versus, a lot of the US crowds were still kind of, it was either a curiosity or a novelty at the time, sort of like how it is now. But
yeah.
Europeans seem to appreciate certain American black metal bands more than Americans did. Like, that was, once we got our foothold there, that was when we started really, that was when the offers were coming in, where I was going over to Europe and then touring, once every year or two for a while.
Yeah. So, and I can agree with that, because you know, the consensus is a lot of people will say, you know, European shit on U.S. black metal, and a lot of them did. But then some of the biggest fans that, you know, I had from, you know, the early Thornspawn days, you know, through other, even through Pius Levis, are Europeans. Like they love it. So you can't. It was this, you know. It was there, but there was also not true in a sense too, because there are a lot of people who really freaking appreciated, you know, black metal from the U.S. or not. Can I even say that, or they just appreciated black metal? So it didn't matter to them where it came from. They were just, you know, they like good black metal.
Geographical tags weren't really like the thing for them that they are here.
Yeah.
You know, everything was either black metal or shit. Whereas here we're like, okay, well, this is Greek black metal, or this is Swedish black metal, or this is Bolivian black metal, or, you know, fucking whatever. Because Americans love to label shit, and that has just gotten worse and worse and worse as time has gone on. And now you have a dozen different labels for dog shit music.
Yeah, the subgenre of genres, it's gotten kind of outrageous. I don't keep up with any of that nonsense. It's just like, nah, are you? It's almost as bad as pronouncing things, you know. Like, what the fuck are we doing? Is this you know, death metal? Is this black metal? Black thrash, you know, kind of.
Does it speak to you, or does it not speak to you?
Does it do something to your inner soul or not? You know, that's how you should judge it. Does it do something to you or not? Does it fucking not? You know, because, you know, you read this and that or whatever. But anyway, I always thought that was cool that you were able to do that. Bust into the European, you know, scene of black metal and just, you know, make it happen, dude. I think that to me, but that, I mean, that should mean to me like a lot of this black metal is about making it happen, and that, but that can just apply to like almost anything. But, you know, going back to, you know, hardcore punk, do it yourself type of attitude, you know, just make it happen. All right, here we go. We got a super chat from one of the regulars, Mike Violate, who's a maniac in his own. Just listened to the first track of Creed, Ruiner, new jam for me, and it's great. Neil, do you know Rob Knopf from Ezerate?
No.
No?
Maybe.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who I've met over the years that, I mean, look, you know, like 2008 to like 2012, I was real big into drugs. So if I met somebody, you know, I won't remember that. And now that I'm getting older, my memory just sucks from, you know, naturally. So I forget a lot of people that I've met or that I've talked to.
I'm the same way, dude. And I'm older than you. It's amazing I can get up here and do a YouTube show. I can get through it because sometimes my memory, like, I know
it's amazing that you can figure out the technology.
Yeah. I can just fucking, you know, I'm Gen X, but, you know, I'm verging on, you know, the boomer Gen X timeline here, you know, sometimes. So it's funny that I can even fucking do this shit sometimes. But I lost my total train of thought while we were talking about fucking Mike. But so after, you know, you were doing all that, I know that you went and started hanging with new, you know, maybe I'm wrong, I don't fucking know, but I got the impression that you were hanging out with a newer crowd, like the Leviathan crowd and the Knockmistium crowd. Is that correct, or is that just me? Because I think we didn't really talk much during that era, probably right around after 2005. I think, you know, we were friends, but, you know what I mean? I know we used to communicate a lot more prior. So
we didn't, our paths didn't cross as much. I was spending more time, like I spent a lot of time in Chicago. So I was, you know, getting in with those bands, like, you know, Knockmistium, who I eventually joined for 2 tours and a record, Cult of Death, Sarcophagus, you know, like any of the stuff that Andy was involved in. Like that was, Chicago really became like my second home. And then, you know, I would go out to California and do shows out there too, because Noctuary would be my backing band. And so through that, you know, I met Jeff from Leviathan and Scott from Zaster, and I started doing my label in 2001 or so was when I really started taking Bloodfire Death seriously, and so I signed Xaster. So like I was unfortunately I was the first person to really bring Xaster to the forefront. Sorry about that, everyone. And so I was like communicating with those guys a lot. And then then I had a nervous breakdown in 05 and didn't really talk to anybody for a while. And then when I popped back up, started doing shows again in like 2010, 2011, again, there was an entire new crop of people. And so it seems that I am perpetually the old man at the back of shows with all the young kids, which makes me sound like a pedophile when I put it that way. But
it sure does, but I know what you mean.
I keep, I don't want to say that I'm like floating through scene to scene to scene or anything like that, but like I just keep appearing in new places. But I mean, now like I used to live right by Philadelphia, so like I knew everybody there, and I hadn't played Philly in 6 years, and we played it in November, and I didn't know fucking anybody. So I think that I might be at the end of the line now as far as being involved with the newer kids.
You might have finally aged out, you think? Who knows? There'll be a crop of kids who will discover, U.S. black metal from the early era, and they'll want to, you know what I mean? It kind of goes in cycles. They'll fucking be interested in it, They'll want to know more about the, hearing this band and who this was and all that. Like,
I mean, I don't know. Like American black metal now, like when people go back and look at the history of it, there's like a quick byline about like Demoncy and Profanatica. Yeah, maybe I probably met him when I've been in Chicago before.
Who the fuck is knocking at my door, dude? God, I tell you, it's almost 9 o'clock.
But uncivilized people.
Assholes. That's who they are. I'm not going to answer that.
So, no, it's almost past my bedtime.
Okay. It's Necro Wolf. That's hilarious. It's actually my wife. Carry on for a second. I'm going to put you solo. Okay. Fine.
So what I was getting at is like when you look at American black metal now, like everything is all based around. It's like it started with Wolves in the Throne Room, and they just forget like a huge swath of bands, and then you look at what's been written about American black metal, including the book that I was a part of, and so much of it is now all about identity and all that it's really kind of lost its way. But that's what Americans tend to do with subcultures. We either commodify it or we politicize it. And that's what I got, everybody.
All right,
if that makes any sense.
I'm over here being a jerk, and my wife brought me a drink. So, shout outs to
ungrateful.
Being cool. I am like, who's the fucking asshole knocking at my door? It's fucking my wife being nice. Story of my life. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big deal like Xaster and all that. I mean, whatever, it happens. So
I enjoyed. I mean,
go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I obviously enjoyed it enough to sign him for the first record, and then by the time it was time to do the second record, that was more of just an obligation than anything, and then I just haven't really paid attention. Leviathan's music, on the other hand, I think is fucking brilliant every single record. So
yeah, I like Leviathan. That stuff was rather insane. It has and that's what's I think some of these bands. I know, like, I'm from the older scene, and we'll pick on them sometimes, because it was different. It wasn't like in the traditional sense of what we were used to. Because I always say, I like black metal, but I came from metal, so my roots are in metal. Like regular traditional heavy metal, and then forward, where I can tell some of these guys came in probably listening to black metal. And I could be wrong, but that was their influence. They didn't have the big metal influence, but that's what kind of made it fucking different, because they had a whole different take on everything. than like, you know, a traditional heavy metal is, you know, getting turned on to black metal. How do you think that is the fact, or is, you know, you're totally off base, Carl?
No, you're completely on it, because think about a band like the Ramones. Now, when the Ramones were first out, it was groundbreaking. People had never heard anything fucking like that. It blew their mind. If you're a young kid listening to the Ramones now, it has no impact.
No, not
and
at all.
you know, you came up listening to bands that have been influenced by bands that have then been influenced by bands that have been influenced by bands that were into them. And you know, same goes with the older traditional metal. Outside of, you know, people who still obviously are absolutely fanatical about Bathory, Venom, Frost, that kind of thing. But there is a huge crop of kids that got into black metal from bands that got into black metal from Transylvanian Hunger. So it's, I'm not going to say that it dilutes it. It just takes it in a completely different direction.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be serious, you do need something to come in to kind of spice something up, or it will become just repetitive and kind of, it will get boring, you know, if you just do the same thing. Unless you're like AC/DC or Motorhead, you know, you just know how to keep, you know, taking the same recipe and making a different record with it, but it still, you know, kicks ass in some way or another. I know I could probably use a better analogy, but you know what I mean? That's the type of bands they were. They didn't really change too much, but
no, I think that's a totally apt analogy. Definitely, you know, there's certain things that you listen to for the unexpected. There's certain things that you listen to be surprised by, to be thrilled by, and then there's other things bands that you listen to that it's almost a comfort thing, where the AC/DC, the Ramones, the Motorheads of the world, where you know when you put on a new record by them, you know what it's going to be before you even listen to it, and that's exactly what you need.
right. I mean, like when you know you got that Morbid Angel album with Dave back, you know, we all were hoping it was going to be Altars of Madness Part 2. Kind of quite far from that, and it was like a nightmare. And I still don't see how they thought to themselves, like, yeah, this is going to kick ass, you know, Destructo's marching, you know, our crowd's going to eat that up.
There's certain, when certain people get older, it's like they leave a part of their creative brain behind, and that's also the part that is rational and logical, that is going to basically tell you, like, is this a good idea or is this a bad idea? Like, they lose that filter, and they're just like, well, fuck it. Especially a band like Morbid Angel, that, you know, there's that ego there that, well, whatever I do, so they're going to fucking love it, so I'm just going to be self-indulgent.
Yeah, you got a good point.
That record.
And you could tell, you know, they're not the guys that did Altars of Madness any of that. You know, they're completely different. You know, whatever's going on in their lives and all that, you can obviously tell, or they wouldn't have made an album like that. All right, here we go. We got a massive super chat from Tommy E. Cock Vomit Beckers for $25. Look at that. I don't know. There is no goal. The goal is just to have a fun interview. But did you reach the goal? Cheers and cheap beers from the nasty national home of Little King's Cream Ale and Midnight Dragon Malt Liquor. Tommy, thank you, dude. Much appreciated. I love your super chats, by the way. They're hilarious. So yeah, you know. So I mean, I don't think we're gonna have, like, you know, are we gonna have the industrial moment, you know, our wannabe early '90s Krieg industrial moment, or is that something that we can kind of be safe to say that's not gonna happen on a Krieg album?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I've done, you know, like, experimental noise shit on records, you know, that kind of remind me of, like, Coil or SPK, something like that. But I mean, that was back when I was doing a lot of drugs. Nowadays, like the last record we just did, it was basically me writing as many Gorgoroth ripoff riffs as I can do.
Fucking awesome.
Because
Gorgoroth appreciation right here.
Exactly. because a few years ago I started, listening to a lot of the stuff that I listened to when I was younger. And it wasn't even just a nostalgia thing, but like I really got back into the early Emperor stuff, all the Gorgoroth with Hat and Pest, and then the last one they did in 2015 with the dude from Serbia is fucking fantastic. Plus they do entertaining things out on the road.
Yes,
I really
they
started.
sure do.
I really started revisiting a lot of old black metal and a lot of the things that made me want to do this in the first place when I was younger. And so I wanted to write a record that was reflective of that. And I did that. And now next time I don't know what it's going to be, but it's not going to, I'm not at a point now where I feel that I need to experiment. I will if I ever hit, like if I ever, find it necessary, if I ever find something that I really need to express. But for now, no, there's not going to be like a massive genre shift. I'm not going to go from Swordmaster to fucking Death Stars or anything like that. So,
that sucked.
Yeah, that was
like this.
That was a shame.
Yeah, because Swordmaster, that EP that they did or whatever on Full Moon, I thought that was great. I was so looking forward to what they were going to do. And I know that they did the thrash album, whatever, but their EP is still the best. What was it, Wraps of Time or whatever? I think that was good shit, man. They should
one of the best guitar tones ever.
Yes, it was just killer black metal. But that's funny that you bring up Gorgoroth, because Gorgoroth is actually probably one of the Norwegian bands that never really altered too far who they were. They kind of always stuck to Gorgoroth style black metal. Some albums better than others, but still you didn't get this crazy genre shift in their sound or anything. They always stayed black fucking metal.
They were one of the few bands from back then that really did that. I mean, look at Covenant or Emperor or we could sit and just name band.
Yeah, you could just start naming them all off. Mayhem, all of them. They had their moment. I find it funny now that a lot of people are rave about, the younger kids rave about Grand Declaration of War as being this really great record, and they love it. And you remember back then that was not the reception, dude.
So talking about the second Judas Iscariot show, one of my memories there was Andy had just picked me up from the airport, and we were in a trolley car on the way to his apartment talking about Grand Declaration, because I had just come out, and just what a steaming pile of shit we thought it was. And a lot of it wasn't even that they were trying to be experimental or anything like that. It was that the drums sounded like a fucking typewriter. And so I keep having people, in the successive years since, being like, no, you have to, listen to the remaster, give it another listen. It really sounds a lot better. And I don't know if I can bring myself to do it, because I have like that initial bad taste in my mouth. It was like I put that record on and somebody put a big fat stinky dick in my face, and I'm never gonna forget that smell.
I don't want to experience this again. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
It was a weird time, because there were all those bands that had started out as pure black metal that were all really just trying to break. I guess kind of like I talk about with Black House, where they're really trying to break out of the dogma of things, but they did it in such bizarre ways.
But
some of them did it well, some of them didn't.
That's what I was gonna say. Some did it well, and some kind of fumbled the ball. That album to me was a fumbling of the ball. Because
that was a fumbling of the ball.
I thought big time on the game over fumble, pick six, whatever you want to call it. I like Wolf Lair Abyss a lot, so I know even to some people, like, oh, you're Anonymous only and all that. Hey, whatever, I get it, but I thought Wolf Lair was a pretty fucking good. I was like, okay, there's hope. They can still do this, and it was a shock. I'm going to try to get Rune on the show and get to the bottom of what happened on fucking Grand Declaration, because he was a big part of it, Maybe he'll have some more insight, But I don't think he was such a big part of it where he could have, decided the direction of the band, I don't know. But I think they made made some better albums afterwards, though. You know, they
Oh
kind of
yeah.
got back on track. You know, that was just a bizarre take. But enough with them.
I
Everybody
mean,
talks about them.
it's an old mythology where like there's tons of bands that have these illustrious careers that have this one just dog shit record that kind of just tanks everything. So
And it took them a while to kind of recover from it too. I thought that get being taken serious again because that. But now it has a totally different perception of what younger people, newer people is what I see. But anyway, that. So let's talk about your album. Name it, because I was under. I didn't even know you did that, dude. That's how the loop I am with newer Krieg. What is the name of the album? The new one.
it's called Ruiner, which I have.
Oh, that's right.
I've displayed beautifully behind me.
Oh, okay.
Fucking glare of my ceiling light. That's my really clever, subtle promotion behind me. It came out last October.
You should show it. Last October. Oh, so it's been out a while then. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what label did it?
Profound Lore.
Oh, okay. Oh, shit. I should have been aware of that. Now I feel like Chris Farley. Stupid. I was like, that's a big label. They should neck rhymes out of the loop on a lot of these things nowadays. But it's funny. You talked like you did that. You fell in love with the stuff that got you into it in the past, and you were inspired to do something like that. Because that's exactly what I kind of do with this band. Because I like the era of death metal and black metal, and the lines were blurred and all that. So with me and Big Mike Link Swarngul and the other Mike, we're just playing that style of black death from late 80s, and I'm having a blast doing that. Cause I think in the end that's probably my favorite style of metal, is that Nickervore, Incubus, stuff like that, Slaughter Lord. That's really my real bag of tricks. And then I would say black metal is after that, the early 90s black metal music. So I get.
Yeah, but I mean that's a solid foundation. I mean that's how a lot of the Thornspawn stuff that you guys wrote early on had that feel to it. That was when American black metal really did have this hand in hand with old school death metal.
Oh yeah,
where
for sure.
A lot of the bands really they were just as much Beherit and Darkthrone as they were Deicide and Possessed.
Mm-hmm. Because well, I mean, what would really influence that prior to that would have to have been those bands, Possessed and Nickervore and Old Morbid Angel and whatever the case. This is my hot take, and I always told Andy this to his face. I like Sarcophagus more than Judas Iscariot. What's your take?
That is a hot take.
I know it's a very hot take. It's smoking hot in the black metal world, but I was just like, damn, that fucking album rules. Requiem for the Death of Passion. I think that's an American metal classic. That, in my opinion, I know it's a hot take for a lot of people. Well, what'd you think of that? I want to hear your take.
So that's how I got in touch with Andy initially. Was the first Sarcophagus full length for We Are Consumed by the Darkness, which I ended up reissuing a few years later. They wouldn't let me reissue it with the amazing corpse paint pictures that they took that were all over the place at the time. I view Sarcophagus and Judas as entirely different things. So
well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not going to say.
I don't know which one I like more. I'd say Judas meant more to me.
You were more involved in that, so yeah, so it makes sense. Yeah, and I'm not.
Sarcophagus is untouchable.
Yeah, I just imagine if they could just got on like maybe a bigger label or something just a little bigger than they were, it would have really gotten some out there and done some things.
There was a third record that they had recorded that
I remember that.
I know it's gotten out, but that could have been a real big stepping stone. But that was right around the time that Andy he had moved, so Sarcophagus really wasn't like this big priority for him anymore. And then like 2 years later was when he had all the drama with his family that caused him kind of just kick out of the scene.
Yeah.
But he did a whole bunch of projects right after he ended Judas that are just as good. Some of it's a little bit better, like Debauchery, which was a Black Death project that I released the EP for that. That was amazing. Desolation Hymn, which was like, it was him and MK from Catharsis. They did like a depressive band. That was really killer. Flagellator, which was his black thrash project, was really good. Andy just, everything that he did was pure quality. And so it's,
That's a fact. Yeah.
I think that you and I were just lucky that we were able to, that we came up at a time when that was active, and that's not, you know, just stories that people told us. Like, we got to see that kind of thing happen as it happened.
In real time. Yeah. No, I always thought Andy was super talented. You know, the stuff he did, his vision for what he was doing. It's almost like, you know, people don't know now, but Andy kind of took like U.S. black metal, our, you know, what we were doing, you know, not the established bands. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the Krieg'S and, you know, Inquisitions and Thornspawns and Versiferas, whatever, and just took the flag and was trying to put it around the world, you know. I don't know if he loved every band or not, but he was really cool about trying to make it, you know, a thing, and like just championing it for the rest of the world to see.
Without what he did for us, I mean, especially Krieg in particular, because outside of a select small group of people who enjoyed what I did, he was who really gave me credibility to the outside world. And he did that with a lot of bands where, again, like you said, even if he wasn't super into it, he made sure that American black metal was looked at as a serious endeavor and not just, you know, a bunch of posers from the U.S., you know, hopping on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
So without him, you know, like he's the first person that brought Black Witchery over to Europe. I mean, that would have happened eventually, I'm sure, but
yeah,
you know, he got them into Europe. He got us into Europe. You know, Inquisition, all that, and then, you know, from there, like Versifera started going to Europe, because when Jeff went over with me, he made all kinds of contacts there, and a lot of this is just all from the seeds that Andy planted.
Think about that, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I know, you know, everybody hates on him now, but Versifera did their first European tour with a young fucking Watain. Maybe even their first European tour. I'm not sure. I don't put money on it, but early in their fucking career with
very early.
Yeah, I forget the other Secrets of the Moon. Was that them who went out with them too? I can't remember for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think
yeah, and then they did a split too.
Yeah, that's right. So, like you said, that may not happen if Andy didn't, you know, plant the seeds prior.
No, he made the roadmap to make, you know, a lot of this shit happen, because then through everything that we did in the late 90s and early 2000s, then bands like Knock Mystium were able, they had an easier entryway into Europe to be able to tour extensively there. And, you know, now you see a ton of American bands over there, you know.
No one even thinks about like negative, like, I mean, sure, some people do, but you know what I mean, it's not like nothing like it was. American bands going to Europe, it's like it's almost normal, you know, now compared to back then. That wasn't, especially for, you know, black metal bands, that wasn't happening.
No, I mean, you know, we were going over, we were playing like small shitty bars, and I mean, small shitty bars is completely subjective. It was fucking awesome, but staying in hostels, or sometimes staying in the venue, you know, like we were, I don't want to say that they were, you know, like the pioneers or anything like that, but there's definitely, you can draw a parallel between what we were doing at the time with American black metal to what like Black Flag was doing in the 80s, as far as like DIY touring around the States, building those connections that, you know, years later, they're still bearing fruit. Maybe not for the original people that planted it, but there's still that tree there that, you know, people are able to use.
Very true, man. So I guess we, you know, wherever Andy's at, you know, thanks for doing that for
He's not too far from you. He lives in Dallas now.
Yeah, I don't want to be giving out his info. I don't know if, you know, whatever the case is with that. I don't know if he's still Mr. Private Citizen at the moment or not. But yeah,
he is. I haven't talked to him since Jesus Christ. He showed up. We played a show in Chicago in 2012, and he showed up to that. And that had been the first time I'd seen him in years, and that was the last time I talked to him.
Yeah. You remember Allie, Alex's ex-wife? She told me she went to a metal party. This is years ago, but not like massive years ago. Dad, she went to a metal party a long time ago. Not too long ago, but whatever the case. And she was like, that fucking looks like Andy. And she said he was looking at her like he knew her too, but didn't, want to be recognized or whatever. So she didn't pursue it. And she told me, we were talking about him one time, and I go, yeah, I think he's, in Dallas now. And she's like, holy shit, I went at a metal party, and there was this dude, and he looked just like Andy. But I was like, why would fucking Andy be here? Because she thought he lived up in Chicago or in Europe or whatever anymore. So, yeah, it's funny, you get these weird little sightings from people here and there. They might see them pop up, That was maybe about 6-7 years ago, if I'm remembering correctly. So, yeah, he still pops up here and there. It's just, I don't know.
The one thing I think I can say with as much authority on it, I guess, as anybody would have, really, but like all these, Judas Iscariot reissues that you're seeing coming out that are official. There's a bunch that came out from Europe. None of that. He's none of that shit's fucking official. He doesn't.
Okay, thank you for it, because I saw like Osmos with 1 million Judas Iscariot shirts, and I was like, what the fuck? And then I see it popping up in other things, and I'm like, who's selling the rights to that? Because I wouldn't think
Moribund.
Moribund. Okay, I was just like, where the fuck?
Probably Redstream too.
Whoever had the rights to the releases are selling the merch rights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's crazy, and I was like, is Andy getting a sense of this? Probably not. I don't think so. Because
No. And it's every few years, because Blake released all those bootlegs years ago, probably like 6 years ago, 7 years ago now. That was the last time that I heard Andy pop up, because he said basically that no, I didn't authorize any of this shit. It's all bootlegs. And now there's all these new ones popping up, and it's like I have an idea where they're coming from, but it's under like this weird name for a label. I don't remember the exact of it, but I know that it's more than likely a sub-label of a hidden sub-label of a larger label that's doing it. And then Judas Iscariot's becoming a fucking cottage industry. Everybody's just pumping out, I saw some bootleg CD
yes.
that Nuclear War Now was selling that had a whole bunch of shit. And then there's the Sacrifice of the Nazarene Child vinyl that is just released. There is... Andy did not want that. He ended Judas because he did not want it to become what it's basically become.
Yeah, isn't that?
So it's kind of a self-defeating prophecy.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought. Like, because he really wanted it to be like this underground thing, and not. I mean, Andy came to my house one time, and I had a Demi Borger CD. He just looked at me and laughed. He goes, "Really, Demi Borger?" And I was like, "I'm busted," but yeah. He was like, "Yeah, that's not his thing." I mean, he did not want to be like that type of thing. So,
dude, I used to pester the fuck out of him with things he didn't like.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. That sounds like fun. What would you do to him? Yes, and that was Allie, by the way. Yeah, same Allie.
When we did the Black House, I wanted to do a Velvet Underground cover, and he fucking despised it. Like he. So I would play him Lou Reed constantly when I would go over and visit him in Germany, and he hated it. But to show you the kind of dedicated artist he was, he actually went out and he bought a cello, because there's a cello part in the song that we covered, and he learned how to play the fucking cello so that he could play that part.
That's awesome.
And make it, we really worked on making that song Venus and Furs into this miserable black metal song. So that shows the kind of dedication that he had. But when we were recording Black House, like Queens of the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf was pretty new. So I had that with me, and I played that for him a bunch. He despised it. And then when we would go out to record stores and stuff when I was there, I found a really great Lou Reed bootleg when I was there, and he was fine. We would sit and listen to it in his apartment, in the mornings and shit. But he would just constantly, he would imitate it, and just, you could tell he fucking hated it. But then towards the end, before he became a hermit, he got really big into like Sonata Arctica and like all this like epic power metal shit, which I personally cannot fucking stomach
I
at
did
all.
not know that. Really? Wow.
His apartment
That's
had
a
like all these
curveball.
posters for these fucking power metal bands and shit. Like the last time I went there, it completely changed. And so that was how he was able to get his revenge on me, because he would play me that shit. And it just,
Goofy ass
there's
power
something
metal.
about like epic power metal that makes me have to shit. And so that was how he got back on me. So
Yeah, it always comes back one way or another. You're gonna get what you did is gonna come back to you in another form. And
mm-hmm.
I do like goofy power metal, but Sonata Antarctica is not one of them I do like. So no.
Big poster right on his fucking door.
I would never thought that's an exclusive on the Witching Hour. I would never thought Andy would be into that band, but hey, just goes to show you don't know everything. What's up, fucking JD? One of the coolest dudes I know. All right, back to the subject. So let's go and talk about this Twilight project, because that was kind of seemed like it was a big thing for a while there, right? It seemed like it was black metal super group. What was going on with that? How did this come to be?
I think we weren't the first black metal supergroup. The first black metal supergroup outside of like Zyklon B was that project, that Eben project that was like Phil Anselmo, Killjoy, Fenriz, Satyr, and I think Maniac. But Twilight, basically, that was initially Blake's thing. He was talking to Jeff Whitehead a lot, and they were talking about doing a project, and then they decided to ask Scott from Zaster to do it. And since I was really close friends with everybody there, like I was able to weasel my way in, and so we did the first record we did. It was basically done on a 4-track in San Francisco and in Chicago, in like this like shit ass ghetto hotel in Chicago. Where like each of us came in with like songs. There wasn't any kind of like cohesive writing together. It was like almost like a mixtape of all of our unused riffs.
Okay.
And so we did a record there, and it was originally came out on Total Holocaust, but this was around the time that Blake was really starting to find his footing as far as maneuvering through the legitimate musical industry. And so he got us on Southern Lord for that record. And it was, like there was a ton of hype around it. And then when the record came out, people were pretty disappointed because it didn't live up to, it was not better than the sum of its parts. I mean, you could listen to it and you could hear a riff of mine, or you could hear a riff of Blake's, or a riff of Jeff's. It just wasn't, it was cool to do. It was a lot of fun, but it wasn't really like this like monument that everyone expected it to be. And then a few years later, it was right after I ended Krieg, and me and Blake and Jeff went to a cabin in somewhere in Michigan in the middle of fucking winter. It was like right after the Super Bowl, so it was like in January or whatever, with no running water, just fucking freezing. And we went up there with drums, a guitar, a bass, some equipment, a shitload of cocaine, a shitload of booze, and we wrote what was going to be the second Twilight record. And from my memory of it, it was some of the most malicious, incredible music that the three of us could ever possibly do together. Damn. It was just fucking fantastic. And we somehow did not record it because we were all like, we just were fucking loaded the entire time we were there.
Sounds like a party. Yeah.
Having to go outside and shit into a bag in the snow, and like, so that was like, okay, well, we didn't do a second album. Maybe that it's not meant to be. And then a few months later, I guess Blake decided he wanted to do another record. He didn't initially want me on it. Scott was no longer working with the band. Tim from Draugar wasn't working with us anymore. It was basically him and Whitehead and Stavros from the Atlas Moth had joined up, and just a bunch of like session folks, and then Sanford Parker joined as well. And I was kind of a last minute addition, and only one of my songs made it onto the record. And I was supposed to do maybe like 2 or 3 songs of vocals on it. But then the day that we were doing vocal tracking, Blake decided that he wanted to go out on a date with somebody. So that left all of us in the studio besides him. And me and Jeff were just writing lyrics nonstop. And it was like, okay, well, I'll go do my parts. So I went and did my 3 songs that I was going to do. And then we're just sitting around, and it's like, well, why don't I go and do the rest of them? And if they don't work out, they don't work out. But we're burning up fucking label money right now, just sitting around with our dicks in our hands. So I went and I did the rest of the vocals, and Blake got there a little bit later in the day, and he approved of most of it, and he did a few layers of vocals, and that was that. That was how I kind of became Twilight's vocalist. And again, I mean, this is like 2010, I think, 2011, around there. No, 2009, whatever. It doesn't, dates don't matter. Yeah. But a few years later, we decided to do a 3rd record. And that was when we somehow heard that Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth was big into black metal and shit. And the studio that we recorded at, the electrical that, or not electrical, I don't remember the name of it, but it was owned by Sonic Youth's sound guy. So we kind of sent a message to Thurston like, hey, do you want to work with us? I knew that he was into like Leviathan and Zaster, because that was when Leviathan and Zaster was like the big indie thing. Like a lot of indie people were getting into it. Yeah. And surprisingly enough, he agreed. And so I flew to Chicago, and we met him and sat down with him, and like he actually knew more about like traditional real black metal shit than most people who were in the scene for a decade or more. And so we ended up, that was when Blake was like full-blown addiction, so he was barely there. And so the record was basically done by Jeff, Thurston, myself, and Stavros and Sanford. And it took like 2 years for it to come out, because there was just all this difficulty. And I'm not going to go too deep into the Blake stuff.
Sure.
But
we all know difficult. It anyway. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I eventually kind of had to take the helm on things, which was the first time that I really dealt with industry people. I mean, I've been signed to Candlelight at that point, but like a lot of that was done by proxy. So I had to be the one that was, talking to Century Media and making sure the fucking record got out, and then it got promoted. I started doing the interviews for it. And once the record came out, we decided that, that was it. We're not ever going to do a Twilight record again. It was a good way to end, but the record itself, it's disjointed. There's a lot of stuff on it I really love, and the opportunity to record with Thurston was fucking amazing. And then he was cool enough to do some stuff with Krieg later. But Twilight, it represents a lot of unfulfilled potential, because every record had kind of just this chaotic element to it in the lives of everyone who was involved. And the drug use certainly did not fucking help anybody. And so that it makes Twilight more of like a footnote than anything else, which is kind of sad but also appropriate.
Yeah.
Sono's the second record.
Okay, you answered that question. Chris Ferreira says the last album was good, so some people enjoy it. But I can see that because there was a lot of hype around it due to the parties involved at that time, and then Sonic Youth, producing it and shit. That's pretty amazing. So I want to for now.
It was a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what you think, that's like legendary status in underground indie music. Sonic Youth. So it is. It's kind of another fucking lifetime achievement check mark. To have something like that happen to you.
Oh, holy shit! Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So Neill's done a lot of fucking cool shit, but in my opinion, playing Texas is the most awesome. And I got I'm just knocking off some video of you live at the Barracuda in 17. Does that sound right? 9/22/17. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
show?
it was when we did the Red River Family Fest in Austin, and that was the last time that we did anything. That was basically the end of Krieg until 2021.
Okay, well, really? Okay, well, let's take a look at this because we kind of went full circle here. I showed the beginning, and this is like the end. Shit, I didn't even know that. Let's check this out. Some live stuff. Now,
there's a lot of footage of my ass in that one.
Yeah. All right, stupid question time. Why did you cut hair? Why did you cut your hair, Neill? What was going on with that?
It was right around the period that I was going through like a pretty severe nervous breakdown, which was end of 05 through, let's say 11 was when I kind of got out of that. And so, I mean, it was just, you do silly shit. So I cut my hair, and then for a few years, I had kind of, I don't want to say a pompadour, but I mean, it definitely came fucking close to it. And then, like in that video there, like I kept my shit real short for a while. And then 2 years ago, I went to a barber here in Richmond, and the reason why I went to this guy was he had a Tour de Garde Records shirt in his profile. So I was like, this guy knows black metal, like I can have a good rapport with him. So I went and got this fucking stupidly expensive haircut, talking to this guy that didn't know fucking shit.
Shit.
And it was really irritating. And so at that moment there, I was like, you know what, like, I'm in my 40s, like, what kind of midlife crisis am I going to have? I was like, I'm just gonna start growing my fucking hair again. So that's my midlife crisis. I fucking start growing my hair again, and then
welcome back to the
here we are.
Not that it matters. I don't even give a fuck. I was just like, always like, okay, got a haircut, whatever.
Well, yeah, but I mean that was a real popular topic on the internet for a long time. Just my various hairstyles.
Yeah, people had to know, right? Okay. Unrelated question: did Neill play with for Norgaroth or vice versa sometime back then in Europe? I know. Answer that to the chat.
So there's three parts of that.
Okay.
Ash played. He was second guitar for the Judas Iscariot show and Under the Black Sun. So that was the only time that I've ever actually shared the stage with him. Then the Nargaroth live Crushing Some Belgian Scum 10-inch. I was there for that show, and I was actually supposed to release that on vinyl, but then he gave it to No Colors instead. And then finally, the actual answer to that question is I was in talks to do guitar for a tour in the States for Nargaroth, and this is 03, 04 maybe, and that just never happened. And then I haven't talked to him in years, so I kind of just haven't even followed up with what he's up to. I know he lives in the States now, but
oh, no shit.
That's all I
know that. That was another one that was like kind of used in the underground. Black metal was Krieg, Nargaroth. Great song title.
Yeah, and then he couldn't keep his mouth shut, and then it just kind of,
yeah.
Nargaroth still does well, but as far as like, the reputation is not the best.
Yeah, I heard things. I think maybe you missed this earlier. Wasn't Destruction Ritual improvised at some point? I have the CV somewhere. Isn't that in the liner notes, or maybe I'm remembering an old magazine interview? I think you kind of answered that earlier. You recorded the guitars first and then just had a drummer.
It's mostly improvised and written in the studio. I think the only songs that I wrote outside of the studio was Black Ash Snowfall was a re-recording from the Sono Cierno record. So that was done beforehand. And then Destruction Ritual I'd written at home, but everything else is basically written in studio.
Cool. So, okay, we just watched footage and you just told me that was like kind of towards the end of the Krieg. So what was going on there? What were you just like, okay, I done pretty much accomplished everything. I'm ready to end this, or what was your motivation for them? Or did you plan to do it, or
so
what was going on there?
Ran out of steam around like 2015 after Transient came out. Like, we were doing a ton of shows, and then we started doing shows where like we're opening for larger bands. Like, we opened for I Hate God, and we did one of the Decibel shows where we opened for Converge and At the Gates. And there was, I'd signed to Profile and Lore after the Candlelight contract expired, but I couldn't, for the life of me, write anything that I was happy with. And so the show started becoming less and less and less. And then in 2017, we did a Decibel Fest, and then we did that Red River Fest. And I was basically, I was burned out of black metal. I had this kind of childish jealousy of a lot of bands that I didn't understand why these bands were all getting fucking huge and why I was just kind of spinning my wheels. And then, we in 2018, the Split with Integrity came out, and that was, that's a huge fucking honor and really cool. But those songs were all recorded in 2014. I couldn't recapture any kind of magic inside myself. I just didn't have the motivation to do something properly. And also at the time, financially, I was dead fucking broke. And then my girlfriend got cancer in 2019. And so that became my priority, was, taking care of her. And then COVID hit. And then she got pregnant. So it was just like this real life kind of just like shoved everything out of the way.
Wow, that's a lot of heavy stuff. Yeah.
But in 2019, that was when I started rediscovering my love for black metal, because it'd been a long time since I really enjoyed black metal. Like I probably like 10 years. Like I really wasn't listening to a lot of new stuff. And so in 2019, it's not like we were, we weren't going out a lot. And so I'd be at home, I'd have YouTube on or whatever, and I'd just be going through random shit. And I'd start hearing bands that I was like, holy fuck, this is, really interesting. And then I would start reaching out to people on social media and being like, well, what can you recommend me? And so there were certain people that I knew I could trust the recommendations. Like sort of like how you were talking about zines earlier, where
Sure,
like
yeah.
you could go in.
You know they're going to send you the right way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so because of that, like I really just rediscovered the interest. And then I was doing a lot of writing, but it was based mostly on music instead of like writing about people being shitheads. And it was almost like a rebirth of my interest and passion in music itself. And so for a few years, I was just really writing about stuff. And then I was like, I kind of want to do a Krieg recording again. So in 2021, we got together for the first time in fucking years and recorded for the Crucifixion Bells split. And then we recorded a few months later for another split that hasn't come out yet with Withdrawal from Canada. And then later in 2022, I was just like, fuck it, let's go into the studio and just, like do a few songs for a split or whatever. And when I say studio, it's a rehearsal room in Philly that this guy, Jeff Barrow, who's in Sunburster, he has recording equipment up there. So we would go and do like splits or demos and shit up there. And we went in September of 22 and recorded 4 songs, and they were really different. They were really fucking good. There was like a lot of like passion and energy to them. And so a few months later, I was like, well, fuck it, let's record a few more and see if we got a record. And then there was
there you go.
And we hadn't done live shows in forever, so I was like, well, let's do some live shows around the release. So last October, November, it was November, we did a show in New York City, a show in Providence, and a show in Philly. And that was kind of it. Like, we haven't really done anything since. We were supposed to do a show in Chicago, but the promoter, it's the guy that does the Metal Threat fests, there were venue issues. And so then we were going to do the Metal Threat Fest this year, and then that got shut down. So we might do it next year.
Yeah.
So we're doing the Decibel 20th anniversary show later in August, but I don't have anything set up for this year. And it feels pretty good because I kind of just want to go in November and write a new record and record a new record, and then, do some shit based off of that. It's now to the point where I'm doing it because I love it again. I'm not doing it out of any sense of responsibility, quote unquote responsibility to fans or, labels or anything like that. Like Profound Lore, we were signed to Profound Lore for, 2015, so like 7 years before we even handed him anything. And he was totally cool with it. I mean, that's been easily the best label I've worked with.
Yeah.
So I mean, at this point now,
cool.
At this point now, I'm going to do things when I feel that it's appropriate, when I'm motivated to do so. And I think a lot of that is because of, the years where, like, I was just a jealous child, and then I had to really grow up and start reevaluating things in my life. And so, through reevaluating those things, I've then reevaluated how I approach music, how I approach Krieg, and all that. So it's done now out of a pure motivation to create something. And I haven't had that in a long time.
There you go. Me jamming at Pius Levis with just, Mike and, the other guys, but mainly Mike, because we've been friends since high school, and going back to that, it's fun. Just, it's almost like it's a high school band, but we're like adults now. And of course, we play better than we did in high school, but that's what it's really about, is making music with my friend. And the other guys too, my friends as well. But it's fun. Hod never got on but it was always like a rat race. And I know what you're talking about. Like, why is this band getting this? And when I know this is superior, but it's tough that's not a good way to think after a while when you start thinking like that, because you really just can't control what happens. Things just happen, right? Some bands just are at the right place at the right time. They just, whatever. They're the main band. So yeah, and it's great when you can get past that type of way of thinking and just enjoy it for what it is, making music, making art. With especially if it's with people you enjoy being around too. To me, that's like, I think I'm for me, I'm happy now. You know what I mean? I'm not like rat racing, and we play shows when we want to play them, and we won't play shows for a long time, and that's just the way it goes. And we'll just stay in the studio, and studio, aka practice room, is the studio at our drummer's house, and just write music, and do that. There's really nothing more. So I think I can kind of relate to what you're saying in a sense, because the rat race can burn you out, trying to constantly, get this show, chase the show, try to get this tour, having to drive across the country. That can burn you out too, 18-hour drives night after night is like, that's rough. It gets a hold, man. Not into doing things like that anymore.
I think that, especially through writing, like I've through writing, through owning a label, through just being involved with this in over 30 years, like I've just seen sides of the industry that are just disgusting. And so I've done my best to remove myself as much as possible from the actual industry itself. And that's made my motivations a lot easier to deal with, because I'm not trying to please an A&R guy, or I'm not, like, Profound Lore was really, really cool with Ruiner, and, very supportive and all that. And I'd love to do another record with him, but, we're signed for the one. But I'm going into this now where, like, I'm going to record a record where I don't know who's going to release it. And I don't know if I necessarily care. I just want to record a record. I want to
record it. Yeah. That's a wonderful attitude, because you can just concentrate on making your record. And then you're done with it. Then, like, okay, whoever wants to put it out, let's figure it out. This is a good question. Do you get fuel from inspiration from occult principles and concepts, or are you more moved by human condition and pain?
The second.
Second.
I mean, I was definitely interested in the occult and all that when I was younger, but like in that that interview there where I was talking about, like, either the occult or like Might is Right and all that. Like, I really don't. That's not my. Hasn't been my motivation for a long time. I really, as far as like the art that I digest, books, music, movies, all that, like, I really have, I get the most inspiration from the human condition, from suffering, from the horror that the mind creates. Let's take horror movies, for example. I am much more into psychological or even like paranormal stories than I am like a slasher or something super gory. The books I read, I tend to read a lot of existentialist stuff, a lot of old Russian literature, that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that to make myself sound like I'm more educated than I am, but it's just, that's the kind of thing that draws me in. And so if that's what I'm really drawn in by, it's also kind of what I'm putting out as well, because it's what I relate to the most.
Sure. Well, I guess you would be somewhat influenced by it, so you would, influence you. Duh. Stupid. When did you start getting into writing? Like writing for publications and internet, pages or whatever the case. How did that start?
So it was when I managed the record store in Jersey. I started there in 2011, and I just dealing with the public already. Like, anybody that deals with the public knows, like, it's a fucking shit show. But the record store was based
those were
in
some of your best posts, though. Back in the day, I used to love reading Neill's stories of like dealing with these shithead people, man. Unbelievable. So anyway, carry on.
That's basically it. So someone from Decibel, Justin Norton, he would enjoy my posts, and he eventually suggested that I would do, a guest column on the online, on the Decibel website. And so I did that. And I mean, it blew up. It was fucking enormous. It kind of sucks because like, I basically shot the biggest cum out the gate, and now my refractory period has been very unsatisfying because I'm never going to be able to recreate that success, no matter how hard I try. But from there, I started doing occasional guest columns, and then in the end of 2014, they offered me my own column in the print ad or the magazine, and then from there, like I started branching out. Like No Clean Singing is nice enough to let me basically write whatever the fuck I want and send it in, and they will publish that. I started writing for Invisible Oranges a few years ago. I've always wanted to be a writer. That was like one of the things that like I really wanted to do for a living. But unfortunately, writing doesn't fucking pay for shit. Like you could be writing bestsellers, and unless you're like some kind of like I don't even know who I can think of these days that writes these kind of books. Like I could say like the 50 Shades of Grey books, but even that's kind of dating it now because it's not like people really read anymore. But unless you're doing like this mass marketed nonsense, you're not making any money, just like music. So that's something that I do, strictly for the love of it. And initially, like I would write about like my experiences at work and all that. And then I started, especially when I moved to Richmond, I was going to a lot of live shows because there were shows fucking constantly here. Like I would just talk to people and I'd get like a good feeling about, a good sense of what was going on in the scene. Especially like talking to a lot of girls here and how, they got treated like absolute dog shit. And so I started writing about that. And then once I started writing in support of, women not being treated like objects, then all of a sudden I'm being called a fag online and I'm a huge SJW. And then I would write about like how...
Right. That kind of happened, didn't it? That's right.
And then I wrote a few pieces against Antifa, like when they tear gassed a show out in California, or when one of the guys from, I'm going to forget the fucking name of the band, started Conflict, when the singer from Conflict stabbed somebody at a Morbosa Dodge show.
That was here in San Antonio.
Like I was writing about like that. Yeah.
I was at that show.
All of a sudden, it's me criticizing, these extremist groups, and all of a sudden I'm lumped in with, I'm in SJW. And then the last piece that I did in that style was I wrote when it came out that, dude from Inquisition had gotten busted for kiddie porn on his hard drive. That was where apparently I crossed the line, where I'm just this enormous, awful person because, this guy's getting busted for having, kid fucking on his computer, but I'm the piece of shit. Like a lot of NS guys are saying, what a fucking, we could use a ton of pejoratives that would, then get on the internet and get in trouble for saying, but like all these, things that all these NS guys are saying, basically I'm this, huge fag and wimp. And isn't part of the whole 14 words about protecting white kids? Well, what about the kids on dude's hard drive? So that's when I started seeing this immense double standard.
No, I mean...
they're all
I fucking... I've been in the metal scene for a long time, and I've seen, it's better nowadays, but yeah, chicks would get treated pretty crappy sometimes. Really crappy. And see, I'm calling them chicks. That's what shows how dated I am. Females would get, and even I would think to myself.
At least you didn't say broads.
Beat it, broad. No, I didn't say broad. But I would be like, God damn, that's pretty fucking ruthless. And of course, dudes are dudes, but I'd be like, well, I mean, that was your sister or, your girlfriend getting treated like that. You probably feel, or your mother, I don't fucking know. You probably feel a little different about it, unless you're a total piece of shit. So, I think that's cool that, you took a stand against that, because Maybe just because some of these people never had that in their life and they don't know, I don't know. Maybe, but it is weird to get mad about that. And
My stance has never
thing. Go ahead.
My stance has never been political, which is where I think a lot of people really misunderstand where I'm coming from. I'm basically coming from a place of fucking common decency where I'm saying don't be shitheads to each other.
Right.
I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm not telling you that, sure, I do take, occasional political swipes, but I'm not doing this based out of like wanting to be a part of cancel culture. In fact, that's why I stopped writing about this kind of shit. But there's this massive double standard where certain behavior is looked down on unless you're in a quote unquote cool band. Then if you're in a cool band, you can get away with whatever the fuck you want. You
can get away with murder. Yeah.
And so like I got really, really tired of that. And so I wanted to write about it, but then it got exhausting after a while having to, write something, then write rebuttals, explaining myself over and over and over again. And it's when I really learned that critical thinking is not something that is valued in society. And I'm going to say that worldwide. I'm going to say that critical thinking is not valued in any subculture, really. But in America especially, there's this massive sentiment that intellectualism is somehow not, critical thinking is a detriment and not, an asset. And so I got fucking tired of writing about that shit. So now I mostly just write about bands that I like.
Here's my take on that.
It makes me feel a lot better.
I think really smart people sent that message out to the regular people, so the regular people wouldn't care to educate themselves on things. Like, oh, you're some type of scholar, you stupid, like. And that's how you kind of can control the masses, because they don't want to learn anything other, than what they know, or maybe look at something from a different angle. And that's my 2 cents on that. It's easier to, pull the wool over people's eyes if they don't know the whole fucking story.
Yep.
All right. Back to music now, because he really wants to know about this, my friend JD. Can you talk about the making of the EP Patrick Bateman? He's very interested in the Patrick Bateman EP.
Sure. So, what year was it that the American Psycho came out? I think that was not the book, the movie, because that was where I first got introduced to it.
Wasn't that like in the
mid
to late 2000s or something?
I think like 99 or so.
Oh shit, I'm way off. See.
But I love that movie. I really got a lot out of it. And so that made me check out the book. And the book is, way, way different. Well, not way different, but it's a lot grislier than the movie is. And I was just, I'd never read anything like that before. So, like, I was really, really into it. And so I made Andy read it. And, he got the same level of whatever out of it. Like we both were really, really into the book. And so we talked about, before doing Black House, because we knew the Black House was going to be different than any other Krieg recording had ever been. We wanted to do something that was going to kind of close the door on the really noisy, harsh side of things. So we're like, why don't we do an EP based entirely on the emotional reaction to American Psycho, not any of the, going over the satire or, is it a dream? Is it reality? What is it? What's an analogy for it? Blah, 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 metaphors. Just this like visceral feeling. And so we went into the studio the night before we started Black House. It was me, Andy, Steve, who was our tour manager, who then played bass with us for a while, and MK from Catharsis, and we just went in and did its completely improvised noise. And then, like later on, I added the samples to it that I felt were appropriate to it. But it was really weird because, like, it's this caustic, nasty fucking recording, and outside, and this is gonna sound cliche, but this happened. It was a thunderstorm. It was just like this awful fucking storm. It's late December. And then the next morning when we were taking the trolley in to do Black House, it was gently snowing. So it was almost like this actual, environmental change where Patrick Bateman was the end of one era of Krieg, and Black House was going to be the other. But to answer the question about the recording, both of those songs were completely improvised. It's a live recording where we were all, doing shit at the same time. One take, each of them. We ended up doing the first song. We did it live once. Did it as an encore when we played in Belgrade, Serbia. We ended up doing that, and that was fucking brutal.
Damn. Sorry, I had my chair sinks and sinks and sinks and sinks and sinks, so I had to readjust. That's why I went off camera for a minute. So there you go, JD. Now you got your story behind the Black House. So it was kind of an ending of an era, kind of going into the new era, maybe something like that. A little transition record. Oh, I know they're gonna make fun of that word because I said it, but yeah, that's what it would have been. Cool. All right, dude. We're on 2 hours now, just about. Is there anything you would like to wrap up the show with, or get out there before we start winding down here?
No, man. I think we covered a lot. It was nice to catch up.
Yeah, Now let's talk about the fun stuff. Were you with us when we were with Black Witchery and we ate the 35 hamburgers from McDonald's? Were you part of that? Yes.
That was the night that we recorded that video. Because if you notice, like, I'm leaning against the fence, and my eyes are very, very closed. I was high as shit because that was the year the sacrifice was going to be 2 days. But Sam's Burger Joint, or not Sam's, the fucking place before it, Wackies,
shut down.
That shut down.
Yeah.
So we went to Jorn's house and had a party that night, and that's when everyone was filming for that documentary. And like every 5 seconds, Vaz from Black Witchery would just hand me a pipe, and I'd only smoked weed maybe like 3 times before that, and so I wasn't, so I was fucking bombed. And then we went to McDonald's and bought basically everything that they had.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous order. It was probably even more. I think it was like 50 hamburgers or something like that. And I just
they ended up throwing in a bunch of shit for free too.
Yeah, because we did such a big order. That. And then we got back to the hotel rooms and just poured all the fucking shit on the bed. Just started fucking grabbing burgers and eating. I think no one had fucking ate all day. Oh, he knows what's up. Thorn fucking Spawn. That's probably referring to our little video we made there, cursing our mouths off. I still watch that for shits and giggles, by the way. That's some fun stuff. It's like a moment in time. And
yeah, I mean, I'm happy that exists.
Yeah. I mean, I know by looking at it now, this is totally stupid and ridiculous, but it's still fun. Well, it's always going to be that guy in particular. Still is. Yeah, fucking. Well, I know. I just stop there before we get into all that. Neill, this was fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for coming on and just hanging out and chatting with us, dude. That was fun.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Asking cool questions, and I'm glad you're fucking doing music again. Yes, I said fucking. I'm glad you're doing music again, and in a fun way, whereas you're actually enjoying. It's good for the metal soul to do it in the fun way, at least for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, once it stops being something that I'm passionate about, then there's no reason to do it.
For sure. All right, dude. And chats, thanks a lot for hanging out. Neill, again, thank you for coming on the channel. And being just totally honest about everything, too. Fuck yeah. All right, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. Witching Hour is now over. Let me play the little outro here, and we'll be out of here. All right, later.
Thank you. is light without dark.